Hi, guys, this is Ria Davda, your host at the Healthy Hustle podcast. I would like to welcome Rahul Kolle as today's guest. He's a storyteller. He teaches design thinking as a visiting faculty at the Wellinker School of Management, and he works at Cisco. I'm super excited to have him on board because he will teach us the art of communication, the importance of communication, and most importantly, the art of balancing your passion, profession, and fitness. So, moving on to our conversation with Rahul Kolle. Welcome, Rahul. Welcome to this episode.
Thank you very much for having me.
Good to have you on board with Healthy Hustle.
Healthy Hustle is turning out to be a beautiful podcast. I know it is season one. So I'm super grateful that you invited me. I've made it to season one.
Thank you so much. And there's a reason I got you on board because I love what you do in terms of you manage a full time job, you have your passion aligned, and alongside all of that, you have a background in fitness and you're passionate about what, like, just taking care of yourself physically, right?
Yeah, I mean, life would be incomplete without it. I
Yeah.
always say that, you need to do something to pay the bills, you need something to keep you creative, and you need something to keep you alive,
Yeah.
keep you healthy.
I think
So you need all these three things.
you are the example of that for sure.
Thank you very much.
And
Thank
that's why you're on board because I want to know so much about how do you balance these three aspects of your life, what got you started into fitness, and most importantly, today I want to discuss how to communicate, how to use the art of storytelling in business, in personal life, and how to just build yourself as a better personality using the art of communication. So these are a few things we'll be touching upon today.
Yeah, I mean, how do I balance the three? Let's just get that out of the way first.
Yeah.
Barely. I'm kidding. That's not the real answer, but I think
Okay.
it is important. Balance is really at the centerpiece of my life, right? Because when you are juggling many things, I'm not saying I'm juggling many things, but when you are juggling multiple things, you need balance at the centerpiece of it all, so that you can do justice to each and every one of your initiatives, which is exactly what I'm trying to do.
But what does balance mean in this case? Because corporate job takes about 8 hours, I'm assuming. So how do you balance with, like, more majority of your day going to one thing?
I think the definition of a corporate job itself is changing quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of your white collar jobs in multinational companies where you're doing impactful roles are linked to the outcomes you deliver. So it doesn't have to be 8 hours, it doesn't have to be 10 hours. There's no hour linked role anymore. Can you deliver? If you can, then nobody asks you how much time you can deliver that in.
Yeah.
And I have the pleasure of having a flexible job that allows me to pursue all of these various interests and keep my muse alive.
Okay, that's interesting. And what got you started with fitness or just, let's say, self care for your body?
I I was actually an unhealthy kid growing up. I used to fall sick a lot. Okay, and my mom's asthmatic, so genetically, I'm predisposed to asthma, a much milder version of it. So I every come winter in Bangalore, I'm not saying Bangalore's cold. It's a pleasant 16 degrees today, but for every Bangalorean, 16 degrees is kind of cold.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
so every time the temperature dropped below 20 and there was pollen in the air, I'd get bouts of wheezing and
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know what happens. It's not pleasant to go about your day when you're struggling to breathe. And now with so much pollution being there, with so much traffic and climate change and various other factors, it's so important to take care of your health. And I'm glad that I got started on this fitness journey when I did, because now I feel like my immunity, my body, my health is in a place where I can counterattack the circumstances. I see so many people falling sick a lot. I feel like my immunity is in a good place now where I don't fall sick as much. And to me, the starting point of fitness was running. I remember I took part in this school fun run this one time. It was a 3 kilometer run at 5 a.m. in the morning. And this was when I was in 8th or 9th standard, I don't remember accurately, went on this run. I landed in the top 10 out of about 100 people who ran, and I went, I actually did that.
Yeah.
I can actually run. So why not do more of this? And that's how it got started.
Wow, interesting. In fact, two questions have come up in my head. So when you think about asthma, we think about, okay, avoid running or cardio, like, anything high intense. But this completely goes against that misconception that we have. So would you like to explain how getting into physical activity helped you deal with, say, asthma in your case?
Let me set one thing straight, right? I think if somebody has a chronic case of asthma, you should consult a medical professional. I'm in no way a medical professional who's going to give you advice.
Yeah.
But for somebody who has a much milder version of it, and for you it is more of, struggling to breathe sometimes early in the morning or late at night when going to bed, every doctor will recommend exercise to you, exerting yourself physically as a way to counter asthma. So I feel like we need to stop doing Google searches and try being a lot more real. And physical exercise is a great way to improve your immunity and counter any breathing disorders that you have.
It's interesting you said that, like, physical push results in that change mentally and eventually with every aspect of your body. And the second thing I wanted to ask you, would you count this as a preventive way of how you dealt with asthma, or in general, do you believe in the concept of preventive healthcare? Like, you started exercising before you knew the actual value of it, but you're glad it started early. So do you think it was a preventive tool, exercise?
Look, I didn't think so much.
Yeah.
So I
No,
won't
but
take
now when
credit
you
for
look
it.
back at it.
I don't take credit for it, but I do think that I'm glad that I started when I did. And if somebody is unhealthy, if you are dealing with any sort of a physical challenge, I feel like now is as good a time as ever to get started.
Yeah. It's never too late, right?
Never too late.
Yeah. Okay, that's very interesting. Thanks for sharing your story with us. When, well, yes, fitness has always been a part of you, but then you have a corporate job as well. And along the corporate job, you have this passion of yours of storytelling or teaching how to storytell. Can you just, I would just like to know, what is storytelling?
To me, it was a coping mechanism to be a more interesting person.
Okay.
I have lots of cousins. I come from a huge family, lots of cousins, relatives. And being a young brat growing up with older cousins, it's difficult to fight for their attention. And I was always dismissed as the youngest cousin. So a good way to be memorable and to get people's attention was to be extra. And that's how I got started with storytelling. If I could tell compelling enough narratives, if I could paint ordinary incidents as something that was very remarkable, I understood that people listen. And the same applies, it has a rippling effect. It same applies to every walk of life, whether it's work, whether if you're at university and you're presenting a project, whether you're a PhD student, it does not matter. If you have an important piece of information, I've realized that's not enough. Climate change, very real. It's a problem we're all grappling with. Every time on primetime TV, there is an environmentalist who's called on television. They go, climate change is nobody cares. Say it so that I care.
Yeah.
Make it interesting, make it worth my time. We're no longer in the field of information. I feel like it's a combination of information and entertainment. We're all infotaining people. That's the world we're in. And storytelling is a key part of linking information to entertainment, getting people to care. That's what storytelling is to me.
Interesting. That is so nice. And you said it very rightly that it is not just the information, it's about how you deliver that information. And of course, when it comes to the corporate setup, or say like any entrepreneur out there, when they have to, like, how do they use the art of communication in such a formal setup? Because of course, we can't always dive into, like, say, a story or entertainment. How do you think uh, the art of communication can work in this formal setup?
I'll give you a short answer.
Yes.
Actually, I start with a question. Did you take a flight recently? Have you taken any?
Yes, of course.
Did you pay attention to the flight announcement?
No,
Why?
because I've always heard it on, like, it's always been there. I know what's going to be said.
So I think it's what you call a hostile message environment. Because the funny part is the person listening doesn't care. And what's worse is the person delivering the message also doesn't care. So the thing that's suffering here is the message, right? In a corporate setup, a very similar thing happens. We sort of know what a business leader should sound like. We sort of know what we're expected to do when we're in a conference room. When we continue to maintain these stereotypes, we keep them alive,
Yeah.
The thing that suffers is the message. So
Okay.
a simple way to break the mold is the element of surprise. Do something unexpected. That was a bit extra,
That
no?
was.
I don't know which camera I looked into, but hopefully that worked. Do something
Yeah.
unexpected. I watched this show, the Ellen show, the Ellen DeGeneres show. I know
Oh yes, I used to watch that as a child a lot.
a lot.
Yeah.
And two people who are very controversial in the news today, Puff Daddy and Ellen, right? Famous for all of the wrong reasons, especially Puff Daddy. But he was on this one episode. He was sitting on a chair just like this one. There was an enclosed table, and out of the table came a clown, and Puff Daddy lost it. He freaked out. I don't know if you can play
I
that
think
small
I've
clip
watched
here.
it.
Yeah.
I think I've watched it. Yeah.
And the interesting thing was, it wasn't just Puff Daddy who got surprised. The audience also were at the edge of their seats when that happened. Can you create moments in conversation where people are at the edge of their seat? More so when the information that you want to communicate is so important that could decide the fate or the future of your company. Why would you deliver that in a boring way?
Yeah.
That's simply my question to everybody who wants to think about this.
Exactly. That is very interesting. First of all, I love the little elements of surprise you gave me over here. And in addition to that, I would like to say, like, everyone's trying to promote health. Like, even here, I would like to bring about, like, why we should take care of ourselves, all of those topics. But I feel like everyone's been saying be healthy. Your parents at home tell you, okay, it's important to wake up early, do this, or like someone at school is telling you. But I think it all comes down to how a person delivers that message of why you should be healthy, right? It's about the why of what you're doing should be emphasized on. Am I right here?
Agreed. Incentive structures are very different for different people. If you tell an 18-year-old boy, straight boy, who is getting female attention for the first time, that wake up early in the morning, be a disciplined kid, that may not land the way you want it to land. But all of a sudden, if you show him a Chris Bumstead video of him doing bench presses and having 18-inch biceps, and him getting all of the female attention, maybe that's a more compelling message. I'm not saying that's right, but maybe that's a more compelling message.
Yeah. Like you rightly said, the intention or the thing that can help them get into it can matter from age to age.
Yeah.
Like you have to just know who you're delivering it to.
Comes back to storytelling again.
Yeah.
What does the person listening to you care about most? What does your listener care about most? Every person has their own individual problems. Can they feel heard? Can they feel connected? That's why I love Arijit Singh songs, okay, by the way.
Yeah.
When I heard Channa Meria for the first time, I was single, no heartbreak, life is going great. But for some reason, I could connect to the song when I was looking outside the window in a cab, it was raining outside, and I felt sad, and I was listening to Channa Meria because I saw myself in that song.
You felt like main character energy.
Main character energy.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what it is. Can the person listening feel like they're the main character in the story that you're telling them? And fitness, the movement of fitness can be perpetuated, can be propagated in a very similar way. Can the person listening to you feel like I have something to gain out of this? It's a very real benefit I have today, not 10 years down the line, not 5, not tomorrow, today.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I like hearing that as a fitness trainer myself, because getting people, it's not about getting them on board, it is about how to keep them consistent over there.
Yeah.
And these words of motivation really play an important role.
It's something that you need to be able to do every day.
Yeah.
Unless you don't connect with it, unless it doesn't resonate deeply within you, if it is surface, motivation is very fleeting. It comes and it goes. I get motivated when I see a Gary Vaynerchuk video. 10 minutes later, that motivation may flitter and move on. But only if it resonates deeply within me will I be able to make a lasting behavioral change. And that's important.
So, of course, we know art of communication is very important. But if I was to say, do you have any tips for someone who is, say, in a boardroom or talking to their boss or to their colleagues who are difficult to deal with? Not all bosses are difficult to deal with, but when they are in a difficult to deal with situation, how does one use the art of communication? Do you have any like cheat code or tips for the same?
There's two parts to this question. First part is, how do you communicate memorably at work? And that's, I feel like, the prime question, which is you perform irrespective of your surroundings. That's number one. Second one, how do you deal with difficult people at work? and we find plenty of, there's no dearth of difficult people at work. And there's a common thread that ties the two of them together, which is being true to yourself, true to who you are. I feel like the best version of you communicating, Ria, is when you're gossiping, or me when I'm gossiping. When I'm at a dinner table talking to my friends, telling them about the Goa story that went horribly wrong, exaggerating to a great extent, that's the best version of me communicating, because I'm emoting, I'm getting into the act. It's a performance more than it is speech. That's the best version of me talking. If you can bring a similar version to the boardroom, you're the best version of yourself there. The second part of it, when somebody is difficult to you at work, I think this is something that Simon Sinek said, and I'm not going to take any credit for it, which is you need to let people know how they make you feel. If somebody makes you feel belittled, undermined, they need to know. And it's a simple framework, which is, hi, Ria, this incident happened last week. When you behaved this way, it made me feel like lesser of a person. And if this continues, I may lose trust when it comes to working with you, and I may want to avoid working with you. Can that change? Can we get off to a fresh start? If you never let people know, there is no driver to change that behavior. That's one. If they're really a terrible person, I mean, if somebody's a difficult person at work, maybe it's just their style of communicating. But if they're a really terrible person, if they're an asshole, for example, right, just stay away from them. You don't need that energy.
Okay.
Bad energy. Take it out and throw it out of the window.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And like, suppose in a hypothetical situation, you said those words to me like, hey, this is how it made me feel. But if I was to get back to you giving my reasons, like, and there's a lot of back and forth, how do you think in the way of communicating, after a certain point, how diplomatic can you be? Like, like how does one like get out of that situation without making it seem like, okay, I'm giving up?
You've tried, it's not worked.
Hmm.
It's getting into a lot of back and forth. They're being defensive. They're not even open to the suggestion of behavioral change. They're not even open to treating you with respect. Then I feel like that's a conversation that you should gracefully depart from.
Okay.
As much as possible, take that out of your realm of control at work, because it is not in your control. Focus on better. There's always better things to do at work. Focus on better things. If somebody is not open to, you can draw the horse to the water, but you cannot make it drink the water. Yeah.
And along with all these insights, I have a question that I've always actually asked myself, because as a teenager, as just like an adult, I've always found myself reading like books on body language, communication, because being a shy kid, it was always a bit difficult to learn how to like um, convey a message. And through books, through workshops, I have learned quite a bit of communication, hacks of communication, but I wouldn't like to call them hacks, but just ways that you can communicate out in the open. And they've really helped me, because no matter how I'm feeling inside, I feel much more confident. But no matter how I'm inside, I know, okay, this is how to project myself for the other person to feel this or this way. So now that, see, these books, these posts have these cheat codes, okay? They've helped me. They've helped me become a better person, a better host, a better teacher, because being a teacher is all about communicating with your students. But do you think getting like a list of hacks in such a way can actually remove authentic conversation?
Yes and no. If you're somebody who is has a debilitating fear of going up on stage, you have a debilitating fear of communicating with other people, then these thumb rules may help you. Maybe it gives you a structure to the madness that's going on in your head. Maybe it calms the chaos.
Yeah.
No, because if you're somebody who is naturally a good communicator and you want to improve your game and you want to take it to the next level, you see these frameworks, you may find them limiting. If you find something limiting and it doesn't feel right, then why embrace it? I'm a huge proponent of don't give people advice. Don't give people prescriptions. Prescriptions should be only given by doctors, not by coaches and
Yeah.
self-help gurus. I don't
Yeah.
think advices work.
Hmm.
What works is stuff that you arrive at on your own. You have that debilitating fear, you can choose what frameworks you want to use. See if it works for you. If it doesn't, move on to the next. There's so much advice out there. You will never run out of advice to follow. But if you're somebody, but have that keen ear, listen to yourself and be true to yourself and go, this isn't working for me. For example, body language. I feel like when you're communicating, every 10 seconds you should move your hand forward and extend it as if the audience feels like you're reaching out to them. Look at every third person I feel like it's extremely constraining. It's restricting to me.
Yeah.
I prefer a more natural approach. So
Yes.
yes and no would be my answer.
And interestingly, you said it what suits you end of the day. You can take whichever little tip you want, but if it doesn't sit well with you, there's no way you can embrace it as a second nature. Can you? And
Very important point.
Hmm.
Second nature. It should feel like second nature after a point.
Yeah.
If you don't see yourself getting there, I think you're probably doing something wrong.
I think on a personal note, that's what helped me. Just finding something that sat well with me. So even I did not even know I'm using these books at the back of my head. Like we're having this conversation, that's how I remembered I've read these books. But it's not like a check box that you like tick off every day. And as a teacher who communicates every day with students, you got to make them feel welcomed. There isn't like a robotic way of doing it. It comes out naturally. And I think that was a very important point, the second nature and how it should feel true to yourself.
It should. And there's a saying by Naval Ravikant, and you can apply to all walks of life. Okay, the saying is, do what feels like play to you, but it looks like work to others. Okay, you should be in a state of play constantly. If you are having to work too hard, if you're having to work against your instincts, if you're having to struggle against yourself, then that perhaps isn't the way to go.
Yeah.
It should feel like play.
Yes.
Even while communicating.
And I would say teaching yoga is like play to me. But people are like, oh God, how are you teaching so many classes a day? But I feel like you don't realize you're doing so much if it feels like, again, natural to you, doesn't feel like work. Work doesn't feel like work.
And no one can compete with you.
Yeah.
There cannot be another Ria. If there's somebody who was jealous, I mean, you studied at Flame University, someone who's perhaps your classmate, who always wanted to steal your thunder and copied everything you did, they can never outdo you at something that feels like play to you. Because you can play 24/7, bar 365. And they will try to work for 6-7 hours, and then they go, Ria is a freak. I don't know how she does this. And the only way to get to a place where people can call you a freak in a good way is when you're playing.
Yeah.
People call Virat Kohli a freak. People call everyone who's at the pinnacle, the peak of what they do, they're considered to be beasts or freaks. What does that mean? It just means they're in a state of play and nobody can come close.
Yeah. And we also call it the state of flow.
Yeah.
It is just an undisrupted form when you just feel like you're like elegantly flowing from one thing to another without even knowing.
Yeah.
So yes, I feel like that's where the concept of that healthy hustle comes in. Hustle in something that feels natural and you don't even know that you're doing that much for that thing.
And hustle porn is very real, right? Where people talk about slogging, building through your 20s, building something, leaving a legacy behind. And hustle is these days very commonly linked to burnout. And I don't think it's possible to be burnt out if you are playing.
Yeah.
If you take 8 classes a day, somebody else who is trying to mimic or ape you may see this as unhealthy. Then becomes an unhealthy hustle, not a healthy hustle.
Yeah.
So it's important to keep it healthy hustle. It has to be play.
Yeah, it has to feel like flow, a state of flow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is that state of flow for you?
I'm a people person.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm with people, when I'm talking to people, when I have an outcome that I want people to see, whether it's telling stories, whether it's pitching to my customers, whether it's delivering a workshop, delivering a keynote speech, teaching, everything is people oriented. So you see how this aspect of my personality traverses through everything I do. I work as a project manager at Cisco. A lot of it involves speaking to customers and helping them make the most of their investments in Cisco products. It's talking, convincing, persuading.
Yeah.
When I'm teaching design thinking at Wellinger School of Management, it's about getting my students to see what I see in design thinking, getting them to see those aha moments. Again, persuasion. When I'm delivering keynote speeches at different corporate companies on storytelling, it's again getting leaders who are resistant to change, who are set in their own ways to embrace storytelling. It's again that persuasion. So when I'm performing on a stage-like environment, I am at
You
play.
feel natural.
That's my playground. I am in a state of zen. I'm
Yeah.
not there. I'm not mentally there
Yeah.
when I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm. Very interestingly, today before we started shooting, you spoke something about. So, when I asked you, how do you do everything that you do, from say being a visiting faculty, to a corporate, to pursuing your passion of being a people person and doing all these keynote speeches, etc., you gave me a very interesting answer as to what drives you
Mm.
to do all these things. Can you please touch upon that little thing you told me earlier today?
So what happened earlier today was I was asking you if your audience likes spiritual answers.
Yeah.
I'm a deeply spiritual person. It doesn't matter what religion you follow. I'm a practicing Hindu, and I'm a huge believer in Lord Hanuman. And there is he was a huge proponent of Bal, Buddhi, and Vidya. Bal, strength; Buddhi, which is brains, street smartness, applying cleverness to things that you do; and Vidya is the constant mindset of learning. This has to be the most fruitful version of life. We are not univariate beings. We are not just our jobs. We are not just our relationships. We are more. And I think Bal, Buddhi, and Vidya encompasses everything that we do. So I think the balance was, we spoke about balance earlier, the balance was paramount to our ancestors. Even in ancient Rome, whether ancient India or ancient Rome, people had the chance to do everything in life.
Yes.
At 20, you went to war. At 30, you established a family. Till 40, you ran a business to provide for your family. At 50, you became a diplomat. At 60, you became a scholar. So you got to do all of these things in life, all of these things. I feel like that's when
Yeah.
you feel like life is full.
Yeah.
My cup is, that's when you say my cup is truly full.
Yeah. And you cannot pour from an empty cup.
You
So you
cannot
have
pour
to
from an
keep it
empty
full.
cup. Yeah.
And that keeps you full, yeah?
Yeah.
This spiritual insight and your passion.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you think there is a correlation between mental health and say communication or the art of storytelling?
I can see there to be a correlation. Um, we are happiest when people perceive us as important. Agreed?
Yes, agreed.
No matter how humble, no matter how sober a person you are, you feel most happy when you are treated like an important person. I'm not saying fame. I'm not saying you walk into an auditorium and people go, Talaiva, Talai. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
It could just be that you walk into a home where people are happy to see you,
Just to be seen and to be heard.
to be seen and to be heard. And the way you communicate has a
Yeah.
huge influence to play in how people see you, in whether people want to welcome you or people want to turn you away, especially to strangers.
Yeah.
When you're meeting strangers for the first time, for example, if you're a younger person going out on a date trying to find the love of your life, if you're not able to communicate, then you're leaving things to chance,
Yes.
and I don't like leaving things to chance. Yeah.
But interesting, you said if you're like, if you are a personality type that is more shelled up, because not everyone is born that way of like expression, the art of expression. So, how would you like, what would you say in this situation? Because not everyone is born to, like, of course, yes, you said you have to because you're trying to find the love of your life. But what if your personality is such that you cannot?
This reminds me of what I said at a TEDx talk I gave a couple of years ago at PS University. I spoke about about finding your expression, the importance of finding your expression.
Oh, yes, you did mention every human is born an expressionist.
I think so.
Yes.
Let's use an analogy to understand what this
Mhm.
means. You want to write something because you're a writer. You need a medium, right? You need a medium to communicate. If you're a writer, the written word is your mode of
Mhm.
communication. But if you're a speaker, speech is your mode of communication. Very similarly, I believe everybody is creative in their own way. Being creative means you have something unique of value to add to the world. In that way, I think everybody is creative. Agreed? Yeah,
Yes.
I think we're in agreement there. Um, but what stops people from feeling like they're creative is that they haven't found their expression yet. What is your channel of expressing your creativity? For some people, that may be logic, if you are a software programmer writing code for a living. For some people, that may mean movement. If you're a dancer, if you're a person who loves, if you're a yoga instructor,
Yeah.
movement is your form of expression.
Yes.
So if the spoken word is not your form of expression, that's okay. That's fine.
Express yourself anyhow.
Express yourself in the way you see fit. And if you haven't found that form of expression, keep looking. And if you are an introvert anyway and you're shelled up and you struggle to communicate, but life demands that you communicate. Life is favorable to extroverts, let me say. We're living in a very unfair world where life favors the extroverts. Every form of networking is a very extroverted phenomenon.
Yeah.
Being seen is a very extroverted phenomenon. Getting praise, feeling important, all of these are favoring extroverts. So how do you do it using being an introvert? I feel like there is a way, and that is to turn on a switch. And everybody has the switch. You just have to fake it for time-bound periods. Everybody can fake. You can't fake an entire personality for like unbelievable lengths of time, like you're in a big boss house. That's not what I'm saying. But for example, you have a presentation to make today. You can fake being an extrovert for 30 minutes. For 30 minutes, be somebody else. Shah Rukh Khan does this. Shah Rukh Khan on the David Letterman show said that I am an employee of the myth of Shah Rukh Khan. When I do that, I feel awkward. But if I think of myself as an employee of this brand, Shah Rukh Khan, I don't feel awkward. Beyonce does this. Beyonce has terrible stage fright, but she's one of the best performers I've ever seen. You should go watch a Super Bowl performance if you haven't. It's legendary. It's epic. But that's not Beyonce performing. That's Sasha Fierce. Sasha Fierce is Beyonce's made-up persona. Sasha Fierce can do things that Beyonce can't. Shah Rukh Khan can do things in public that his itsy bitsy self can't.
Yeah.
He has a brand and he has an act that he carries out, and his family understands it very well. You can also develop an act. You can develop a character, invent a character who does all the things that you can't.
Very interesting. That was very insightful, honestly. And I think I'll personally take that forward after this little chat that we had. So I would just lastly coming to like one of the last few questions. Coming to habit formation, like of course coming back to these all these things that you do, how did you set that discipline of say, okay, this is the time for my passion, this is the time for my career, this is the time for fitness. How do you do habit formation and how do you do justice to each of them?
Let's talk about fitness first. Staying true to the theme of the podcast.
Yes.
You need a wake-up call. Everybody needs a come to Jesus kind of a moment, right? Where you look at reality in its face and you cannot deny what you see in front of you. Let me not say every, that's generalizing. Many white-collar employees, let's say Bengaluru, we're in Bengaluru today. Many white-collar employees are living a form of accelerated. Their lifestyle simply does not allow for longevity. Mine didn't either. If you're somebody who pulls late nights, if you're pulling all-nighters because of work, if you're having to travel, if your commute is insane, you're doing all of these things that we're not supposed to be doing. It's unnatural for us to be doing these things. You are taking off years from your life. Maybe 5 unhealthy years in your early 30s can take off 10 years from your 70s.
Yes.
And that moment where I realized that, oh boy, this is bad. That was a wake-up call for me, and everybody gets this wake-up call at different times. And once I got that wake-up call, I always had movements that I preferred, right? This is about a preferred movement, a preferred expression of your choice.
Yes.
For me, my movement was running. I loved running. I like lifting weights. But if somebody tried to get me into cycling, I may not have liked it. But what if going to a gym, lifting weights is not the movement of your preference? What if you like yoga? What if yoga was your natural way of movement?
Yeah.
Then you must discover Riya.
Yeah.
Instead of going to a gym,
Yeah.
you must take her classes, right? So it's about doing the preferred form of movement, like a form of movement that comes more naturally to you, one that you're more inclined towards, you're more likely to stick to that. Do the version of fitness that suits you. And with everything else, whether it comes to content creation or being a creative person or fitness or following your passion, whatever it is, if you're doing it, being true to yourself and doing a version of it that you like, I think consistency is a byproduct.
Yes, I totally agree with that, because when people ask me like, what, so every year when I go for my yoga training, I change my school, and they are like, why aren't you sticking to one school? It's about within that movement also you want to see which style suits you. So this is like, it's an umbrella movement, say yoga, and in yoga there are forms of yoga that you would like to discover. So I think the same goes for the bigger umbrella term fitness, and it's about finding whichever little form suits you.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
And in terms of corporate and that, how do you find your habit formation? Like, how do you like find yourself, okay, having the motivation to do that, even though you have this entire passion project that you're working on the side?
Oh, I think that gets to you naturally because the thing with a corporate job is the moment you're slacking, the environment and ecosystem will find a way to tell you that you're being.
Someone's there to remind you.
Someone's there to remind you that you're dropping the ball a little too much.
Yeah.
So it's a nice reinforcing mechanism, and it also helps to see other people going ahead of you. Jealousy is a great driver, unlike any other. Okay,
Yeah.
when you see your peers getting a 25% pay hike when you got a 15% pay hike, even though the money like couldn't matter much to you, but the factor that somebody else got more than you, even though you don't need it, it drives you.
Definitely.
And somebody switches, and if you're in tech, if you're in Bangalore and you're switching, there are whole Reddit threads about people switching companies getting 100-200% hikes. It's crazy, right?
Wow.
So you see all of this and you go, I'm being left behind, and that's a great driver unlike any.
Yes. And I think that comes under extrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
And of course, not everyone can get that intrinsic motivation in the very beginning. I think extrinsic motivations are very helpful when it comes to starting off somewhere. And
I totally agree. And
Yeah.
there's one more thing that has helped me. So every evening when I work out, I have a habit of putting a snapshot of what I did on my story. It's something I've been doing for years now.
yes.
And it started off as a social contract where you tell people you're doing something and you follow through with it. Otherwise, the world only looks at you like some sort of a fraud, right?
Yeah.
So that social contract helps. If extrinsic
Yes.
motivation works for you, use extrinsic
Yeah,
motivation.
yeah.
Use the tools that work
Yeah.
for you,
No
man.
one should feel shamed at being extrinsically motivated.
Yeah.
There can be a prize outside, which is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one should be shamed for being motivated just because there's another prize.
If doing a 60-minute workout in order to post that Instagram story helps you work out, do it.
Do it. Yes.
Do it.
I totally agree. And someone had to say that, and we had to, I think, we had to put that out there, because it's people are usually like, okay, they feel like it has to be nature for me, otherwise I'll be looked down on. And I think this is what sometimes even parents end up like saying, that like, they're like, oh, your motivation to go to the gym is, say, getting ready in gym clothes, like, buying new athleisure. It can be.
Everything is virtue signaling. You go to a
Yes.
Blossoms book house and you post a story about Blossoms.
Yeah.
Are you doing that to promote Blossoms? No, you're doing that to tell people you're an intellectual person. Why do you go to why do you go to Oya, Bangalore? I mean, I'm sure it's a great brewery. I haven't been.
Yeah.
Why do you go there and post a story? Because you want to say that you have a happening life. You even like parents guilt us. If you're saying parents guilt us into doing this, why
It's
do you
fine.
give expensive
Yeah,
gifts
yeah.
when you go to some relative's
Yeah.
wedding? Because you're virtue signaling ki dekho hamare paas bhi paisa hai yaar. Everything is virtue signaling. So don't be guilted into, oh, you're doing a wrong form of virtue signaling. Everybody's doing it.
Yes.
Do the version of it
Yes.
that you want to do. Free world.
Well, thanks for expressing that the right way, I guess. Okay, anyways, now finally moving to the last part of this podcast, I do a little this or that or a rapid fire. So today I've chosen a this or that for you, a very quick one, so that I can get to know you, and you have to tell me the first thing that you choose. Okay, so let's start.
Let me try. Okay.
So a virtual event or a in-person event?
Huh. You really want me to answer that?
This is for the audience, not me.
Look into my eyes and read the answer.
I would say in person.
In-person
Definitely.
events.
Okay, cool. Alone time or socializing? But again, I think I know the answer, but still I'll ask you.
It's very difficult.
It's a one word thing. You have to be very quick.
Social.
Social?
Yeah.
I thought the alone time maybe.
Social time could mean family, could mean your
Yes.
closest friends, so social.
So anyone.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Okay, movement or meditation?
Movement.
Okay, MNC or startup?
I've worked at an MNC so far. Life's great. MNC.
First one to say that.
Yeah.
Okay, movie or reading?
Reading.
Okay, and fiction or non-fiction?
Non-fiction.
Okay, well, same here though. Same
Yeah.
here. If I'm reading, it has to have.
I'll tell you what it is.
Yeah.
It's story, right?
Mhm.
You're stealing ideas. You're stealing ideas and building it into your overall framework of the
Yes.
world. And then
Yes.
if you assimilate it well enough, people think it's your idea only. So it's
Yes.
great.
Okay.
Steal like an artist.
Okay, that's a very creative way of
Yeah.
putting that across.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much. And the Healthy Hustle podcast is up to great things. It will have many, many seasons. And I hope this either went really well or went really badly. I hope it was the former.
Amazingly well. I loved it. But again, thank you so much for being here and looking forward to keeping in touch with you and seeing where this goes.
Yay!
Okay, see you.